That is James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, I'm not sure where you want to start today, so you tell me.
Oh, I think the Bill 69 hearings
Okay.
and Michael Sabia, essentially the head of Hydro-Quebec, suggesting that the now recently and perhaps not so dearly departed Pierre Fitzgibbon was throwing too much electricity at the corporate sector. He points out in the Legislative Committee hearings today that Hydro-Quebec's strategy was to allocate 75% of its production to companies in order for them to decarbonize. In other words, to use electricity to replace fossil fuels, natural gas, so on, and 25% to startup companies. And whereas as far as I know, he didn't cite specific figures, he looked at his questionnaire, which I think was Marlo Risky of the Quebec Liberals, and said, "I can assure you that's not the case. You look at the numbers; those are not the numbers that are going on here." And so everyone is kind of making like the idea that, wow, this is a bit of a bombshell. Here's the head of Hydro-Quebec, in fact, echoing perhaps the concerns of his predecessor, Sophie Brochu, who worried that the Legault government might want to turn Hydro-Quebec into the Dollarama of electricity and be giving, handing out cheap energy left, right, and center in order to sort of like bring up Quebec's the bottom line economically. But the bottom line here is, no, this ain't going to work. It's also interesting because if you have the head of Hydro-Quebec also echoing the premier, saying, no, we're not going to increase residential rates by 3%. And industry will see their bills perhaps go up by 5 or 6%. I'm really wondering if he didn't just throw a lifesaver to Francois Legault to say, listen, you know what? I'm the head of Hydro-Quebec. I'm saying this, and if you want to turn around and perhaps rethink some of the things that the now departed Mr. Fitzgibbon had done, now is your chance to do so. Because really, he and Mr. Legault for the past week has seemed very, very concerned about getting the message across, even though Pierre Fitzgibbon suggested quite the contrary, that rates were going to go up perhaps between 6 to 9%. He's saying, no, it's going to stay at 3%. He's been saying it over and over again. You've got the head of Hydro-Quebec echoing that message. I think, honestly, Francois Legault was thrown life preserve, and I think he's going to have to use it because this bill, the more people look at it, and certainly the more the opposition looks at it, the less they like it.
So, I mean, this would indicate to me that, I guess we didn't know there was a rift between Pierre Fitzgibbon and Michael Sabia, but clearly today they had different ideas on how this should work. You think this is a reason? Is this kind of like one of those reasons for Pierre Fitzgibbon to have walked away because, it's my way or the highway?
Well, remember, Aaron, when Madame Brochu left, everyone who looked at the situation said, well, this is clearly a rift with the government.
Yeah.
She said 25,000 times, no, this has got nothing to do with the rift with the government, perhaps even confirming the suspicion that was indeed what happened. But the fact is, Michael Sabia does not have to take lessons in how he's one of the most accomplished bureaucrats in the country. He does not need to take lessons from anybody in the CAC caucus, that government whose motto is, we don't know what we're doing and we do whatever we want. And I think we may have seen that case here with the allocation of Hydro-Quebec's resources. But as I say, I don't be surprised if down the road you are going to see Bill 69 revised, perhaps to reflect more of what the head of Hydro-Quebec said rather than the former Minister of Energy and the Economy.
Okay, we heard Mark Carney speak today. That was the big news yesterday. He's joining the Liberals in their as an economy, I guess, or economic advisor. From what you heard today, what did you make?
Well, listen, I'm going to have to pull one of your, it sounds crazy, but maybe it could happen predictions. I mean, last week when we were talking about Pierre Fitzgibbon, you suggested kind of out of the blue, try this out. He leaves and then he comes back to lead the Quebec Liberal Party.
Yeah.
And after I got my breath back, I said, well, you swing for the fences, Aaron, but, maybe that's not going to happen. But you know what? You got me going. I heard you talking to our friend David Artel last night about Mark Carney. And I decided, let me take a little sip of what Aaron's been drinking. And it occurred to me, Mark Carney's arrival, to me, could be perfectly explained, because he was very vague today about his political future and this and that. I think Justin Trudeau has already decided to leave. He's going to go. The only question is when. Will it be hung, say, on a possible defeat next week in the by-election in LaSalle, Verdun? Will it be perhaps on a higher note on the 9th anniversary on October 19th of the first big Liberal victory, the majority government that Justin Trudeau won despite all odds back in 2015. Now, the thing is, if Trudeau goes, automatically the job of head of government devolves onto Chrystia Freeland. She's the deputy prime minister. Well, you're going to say, well, how can you can't be deputy prime minister or acting prime minister and finance minister? That's where Mark Carney comes in, because as I've said in the past on the show, you don't have to be an elected official to be a member of the cabinet. They bring him in as finance minister. They find even perhaps, if things are still warm and fuzzy and Papineau riding, they run Carney there, okay? And the minute he gets in on a friendly ride, okay, and the minute it sinks in for a lot of people that the game has changed, what they do then is their strategy is very simple. They go after Pierre Poilievre the way. Did you ever watch the Alien movies?
Yeah.
Okay, they go after Pierre Poilievre the way those face huggers go after their victims, okay? They don't give him a day's peace. They take everything. And I'm not talking about the usual trolls online. I'm talking about cabinet ministers, the whole 9 yards. Mark Miller's been known to do it, but honestly, I think you'll see a big pile-on. Go after Poilievre day after day after day. Because why? Poilievre will be weakened. Because why? Because the only target that he has been flogging for the past 2 years is Justin Trudeau. And all of a sudden, he's out of the mix. So you know what? It may sound kind of crazy, but as you might say, it could just be crazy enough to work.
I wonder, though, in the case of Mark Carney, right, Pierre Poilievre wasted no time when this news came out yesterday, basically comparing him to Tiff Macklem, right, the current, and he previously said in his campaign, Jim, if he becomes prime minister, this guy's out of a job. So Mark Carney would fit into the same category, wouldn't he?
Well, he might, but on the other hand, what's becoming painfully apparent, I think, for people who spend a lot less time paying attention to politics than we do, is that like a certain politician down south, Pierre Poilievre's greatest talent seems to be in finding, alliterative nicknames for his political adversaries. Everyone's got a problem. Everybody's stupid. Everybody's incompetent, and everyone gets a funny nickname. The problem is that's not how you run a government. If you turn around and make these absurdities appear or expose them as the absurdities that they are, rather than sort of like shrugging and saying, no, we have more noble things to do. To get down and dirty with the Conservatives, which something the Liberals have yet to do. I know that polls are there. We've talked about them till we're blue in the face, but polls can change. And theoretically, there's not a thing that Pierre Poilievre can do. He can talk all he wants about forcing an election. The Bloc doesn't want one. The NDP certainly doesn't want one. I don't think they don't have the justification to go to the polls. And it's great for the Conservative supporters. They want to have an election. Of course they do. Why give your opponents what they want? They're not going to get it. And frankly, if the Liberals play their cards properly, and once again, this is all contingent on their biggest weakness, Justin Trudeau, being taken out of the political equation, I think they've got a real shot next year.
All right, let me focus on what we will talk about later as well after the 5:30 news, but I will ask this question I asked it coming into the show. Debate is tonight, September 10th, the date that we've been talking about for a while. Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and as I keep saying, Jim, a lot of people think, debates, who watches debates? I think this one, and other people obviously believe this as well, this will be possibly the most important debate in American political history in quite some time. So what's your take on what you think will happen
absolutely.
tonight?
And political debates have not been going on that long. I mean, I'm not even sure it's even half a century that we've been doing it. There are media-driven things. My concern is, will Donald Trump be Biden's the same way the sitting president was during the last debate? He's 78 years old. No, he's not fast on his feet. He rambles. He tends to go off on tangents. My question as well is, and I've said this repeatedly on this show, is that given that how mainstream media is completely and totally in the tank for Donald Trump, I'm wondering if it happens tonight that if Kamala Harris, metaphorically speaking, hands Donald Trump his head, okay, that the headlines tomorrow morning and the talking points on the morning news shows will be, he was roughly handled, but he remained intact. He came through intact, and his campaign is going to continue. That's what I will be watching for. I'm going to be watching for the corporate spin that is being given, and the flat-out corporate assistance that's being given to the campaign of Donald Trump, and I want to see how they are going to spin whatever happens.
That's always the most fun, right? Watching how that spin works at the end of it all.
Yeah.
By the way, I had a caller earlier today, I forgot his name, who suggested, This is already an unfair fight because, of course, ABC, the news network or the network hosting this tonight, is clearly in Kamala Harris's camp, and they, they're, what do you call them? The extreme left-wing media organization. So it's already begun.
Absolutely. And if I mention anything derogatory to about Donald Trump, I'm campaigning for Kamala Harris. If I do the same for Pierre Poilievre, I'm campaigning for Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau. You heard that right, folks. If you listen to the show on a regular basis, you know that's not the case. But that's the level right now.
Yep.
Of political debate, Aaron. So we have to get over it.
That is absolutely the truth. Jim, thank you. Appreciate it.
Adam.